Okay, let's call this meeting to order, the work session for Tuesday, May the 28th, and we're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Caesar.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Vice Mayor Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts is absent. Alderman Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor's here also. So now's the opportunity for citizen comments on items not on the agenda. I have no speaker cards for that, so we'll go right into item number one, which is event permit for Franklin on the 4th, sponsored by the Franklin Lions Club in downtown Franklin. Alderman Peterson. Oh, you're just checking. Any questions or comments? We'll go to item 2, which is special event permit for Christmas parade sponsored by Downtown Franklin Rotary Club, December the 7th. Everybody's happy? Okay, next we'll go to item 3, which is value engineering guidance on LEED certification and subsurface parking for the new City Hall project.
And Mayor, I'll just turn it over to your owner's representative. STV's been working on this, and one of the things that is an ongoing aspect is looking at value engineering options. And the couple things they're going to touch on with you tonight are kind of literally foundational in a lot of ways in terms of how they impact the cost and the design work that is underway. So they wanted to get in front of you on these items. This is not an exclusive list. It is what is kind of primary at this point, that we wanted to give them an opportunity to walk through with you and answer any questions and get any guidance you want to provide. So take it away, Chris.
Thank you all. Really coming down to it, the two critical pieces here are the LEED silver and the parking garage. And cost, when we look at value engineering, the cost savings with actually getting a LEED silver certification is driving a budget of around $1.5 to $2 million in savings. And that's not saying you can be sustainable. We're still saying follow the codes, drive a sustainable project, have a sustainability commission, follow with a sustainability consultant, but not actually go with an application process for LEED silver. That will start driving the cost of increasing mechanical and also just the filing, the contractor, managing all the waste throughout the process, and taking up additional site space as well. Is there any questions before we go on the second one, or I can describe it all, or we can just go one by one?
Just the Sustainability Commission recommended that we not do it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. This has been run by the Sustainability Commission, and they were in favor of saving the money, but still acting in a way that meets sustainability goals.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Go ahead, Alderman Caesar.
Is there a concern in some way that not having that LEED certification could come back and incur additional costs or elevate something other than just the normal, like what you would expect if you used a less efficient HVAC system? There'd be an increase in electrical cost. Is there an insurance savings perhaps that would be recognized if we were to go for this certification?
I don't believe so on the outside cost of that. No, I wouldn't look at that as soft cost. I'm thinking that an outside cost.
Yeah, a lot of times what I've heard in other projects is that that's more beneficial if you are an entity that might buy, hold, and then sell a property, that you've got that stamp of approval on it down the line. Obviously, this is a property we're going to hold and operate from for decades to come. So it doesn't really check that box. And so we are still going to hit the elements that reach, again, that sustainability goal, but doesn't necessarily get the good housekeeping seal of approval that you pay for.
Yeah.
So effectively, we may not get the plaque, but
Yeah.
we'll have those sustainable measures built into the code.
Yeah, I'll be glad.
We could probably do it for less than $1 million too.
And the second one, we ran some
Yeah,
studies
I
on.
just wanna-
Oh, sorry.
Still talk about that? Okay.
Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
So, yeah, Brandy will make that plaque and make it look really nice. In Sustainability Commission, we did talk about that, and it was, I was very adamant to the commission as well, that I just thought it wasn't worth the money. And we're looking to say where we can save money, but yet not shortchange the building and the development for long term. And I would rather save it here where there are other places that we may need to spend it that would be smarter. So they all agreed as well. And I think just the certificate is not as necessary, but That doesn't mean that we don't select the HVAC that is more cost efficient and also energy efficient. That still does not negate the fact that we will go after the best system that would be long-term savings for our new building. So I just want to say that. Thanks.
Go ahead, Chris.
The second one is the parking garage. We kind of went down through a process of 3 options, one being reducing the parking garage to half the capacity, which is at 100 spots. A third of that be a half of the half, or eliminating a parking garage completely and the cost savings. By reducing the garage footprint and having 100 spaces, there's roughly about a $7 million savings in just going that route and not having to park. Or not having the spots underneath the park. What the pros and cons is that allows you lose some of the parking spots. You still have a net of 32 spots that you're gaining, but your park features now can be a little bit more increased, I guess, for lack of a better term. Your root structures, your trees can get bigger. The park people can really start bringing in the natural beauty to expand that park in a different way. And that cost, the $7 million, is based on a little bit of increase in the park aspects as well. And then you lose when you go down to half of a half, which is you're almost gaining a net zero. You're gaining a net zero is you are losing the cost. Basically, by that time you start, the price per spot is going to be more costly at that point. So your net cost savings is about $9 million, and you're decreasing the parking garage another half. And then there's also eliminating the parking garage completely, which is roughly about $15 million.
Alderman Berger.
Tell you what, $7 million is a lot of dollars. But we're not building this structure and this building for today. We're building this for the future and the future needs. Not unless somebody has a crystal ball is going to find out that automobiles are going to go away permanently in the next 20 years. And we're going to go back to horses or whatever it is. And bicycles. Yeah, scooters. Oh, scooters. Nope, can't do that. It's against the ordinance. So, all joking aside, I think this is where we have to spend the money. We're always short on parking, and when we have all the activities like our Christmas tree lighting and all the festivals and everything going on in downtown that brings dollars into our city, I think it is very short-sighted if we do not do this full parking garage. I think it would be foolish, penny-wise. I just think this is wrong. So I understand what you're saying here, but I'd rather say if we need to save money in other places, that we don't do it here.
Alderman Baggett.
I've always been an advocate for the parking garage under the city hall. I think, to Alderman Berger's point, which makes a great one. I'm intrigued by and you're right. And I was just saying to Alderman Blanton and Alderman Brown that we're not going to dig. I mean, this is your chance. But I'm intrigued by option A, and then I emailed the city administrator some questions too. In thinking through option A, is that at some point the lifespan of the deck, the Second Avenue deck, and I imagine that could be probably engineered to get more spaces than exist there today. And in the future, I'm just thinking in the future, you could maybe go down over there, if we were to rebuild that deck in say 10 or 15 years, I don't know, again, lifespan, I don't know where we're at with that, but that we wouldn't necessarily, that we have some other places maybe to put more, to expand parking on site in the future. Because if you look at the 15 million, I don't know, when you do the math, we're getting 132 extra spots and that's a $15 million delta. It's $113,000 a spot for each extra spot. For the net. That's pretty expensive. And I think that's probably almost 3 times the cost Well, I've seen some people say that it's $45,000 a spot underground to 70, whatever it is. But so I'm intrigued by this, but we would have to have a solution for parking. So even if we were to say no on the underground, it's not like we'd save $15 million because we would still, there would need to be some kind of parking solution, I think, addressed. So the 7 is interesting because then you could take the 7 savings now and still get 100 spaces underground. And I'm just intrigued about what could happen. That might be an okay decision if we could expand parking in the 2nd Avenue deck in the future, or if it demolished and go down there, if a future board would have that option. I could see that being an okay place to save right now, knowing that there would be options for future parking expansion when that lifespan of that deck is up. And I would take the savings now. So those are my only thoughts. I don't think B and C make much sense to me right now, but A is intriguing if there's like a plan for the 2nd Avenue deck over the next 20 years, or however long the lifespan is. That there's it's feasible that we could expand parking capacity there in the future, and take the savings now and let a future board add really build out that parking deck and go down over there in the future and take the savings now. The extra 100 spots or 132 net, I want, but they just come at a very, at a high cost per spot.
Alderman, Vice Mayor?
I agree. B and C aren't really options. I think my concern with A is that while we save the money now, and I think that makes sense, and I can imagine at some point maybe that park, if expansion was needed, we might even go up a couple levels of parking there to add more. The challenge is that I'm going to guess it's going to be a whole lot more expensive 10, 20 years from now. And so while we save the $8 million today, it's going to end up being $24 million when we go to build it later. And some board is going to be sitting there thinking, those idiots, why did they not vote for that when we could have paid 17 for it, or 7 for it? So I don't think B and C are options. I could be certainly, I'm intrigued by A, but doing nothing is not an option. We need to have parking underneath there. To your point, we only get to dig it once.
Alderman Blanton?
You're like, what is your name?
Well, I had 2
Curious.
hands going up
Understood.
simultaneously.
Well, I was doing the nod earlier. I thought you saw it. Curious obviously the expense has gone up because we're digging. What kind of parking garage could we get above ground somewhere else for 15 million? Curious. Quite a bigger, I know, everybody has their questions.
Yes, we need to do some more studying on that, but parking
Spitball.
a parking garage usually is running $15,000 to $25,000 a spot if you look at it for going above ground, whereas you go below ground, you're somewhere in the range of 60 to 100 on the high end, and that depends on what you encounter underground at that point. So,
What's the quick math on that
600 spaces at 25,000 a space.
for 15 million?
That was at the high end.
Excuse me, just to add one more thing to that, Derek Messier with STV also. That doesn't include land acquisition, so it's,
Right.
so that's just the pure construction. So if you add the land in, that price does go up, just to try to apples.
And also, just to chime in, I do think that we have a unique opportunity to do something. I think 100 spaces is, I would be interested to know how many employees park on site. Because with that, in my mind, 100 spaces would pretty much just take care of employees.
Well,
And am I off or
Well,
close?
you're net adding 132 to what you use today. So you would be ahead of the game in that regard. You're losing the surface lot spaces that you see on the Church Street end of this building. So you're going to free up capacity in the existing 2nd Avenue, and you're going to have capacity underground beyond. One of the things we've talked about previously too is the opportunity, and this would be part of the design challenge, is just to make sure we integrate some things that provide some access control so that could have a broader public use and non-business hours, weekends, festival
Sure.
time, that kind of thing. So you can maximize the use of that underground parking when it doesn't have as much of a city use. So that's something to look at that would be part of the direction if we get from you tonight on how you want to proceed with that.
Well, do you have a relatively close number to how many employees would need to park based on offices?
We'd have to give you that. I mean, we'd have to look. I think we have that number from previous study of what it is
Yeah, I thought we-
now. You'd have some growth with the growth of the employee base here, but we expect it more than meets our needs in terms of the underground parking.
Okay.
And then you've got really Second Avenue completely usable, available to the public, which is a nice differentiation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just didn't want to assume.
Alderman Barnhill.
You know, we've had, been some interesting comments made. See, I have a little different take on this. I don't think in the future, I think that the employees will be working more at home. I don't think they'll be coming down to City Hall. I don't think that's what this will be. So if you had 210 down here now, I don't see that. I don't see it growing. I see us offering opportunities for employees to virtual. We did it ourselves for a year or two with the governor mandating what he mandated. But so I would be curious, the option A with 100 spaces, you know, we're not eliminating Second Avenue. So if we don't get 200 spaces out of this particular location, underground, we still have the option. We own the Second Avenue garage, so it's there, it's available. All we're doing is just making up for the difference of what we're losing on the surface parking in the back on Church Street and adding some additional parking to it. I think we need to really, really take a look. I am anyway. I don't know about the rest of us. I mean, the rest of us may be able to write a check. I have no idea. Just have that, pay for that, and pay for the 100 spaces. But we asked for was for you guys to come in and look at these things right here and make sure that there were some options for us. And we've had $8 billion in the budget for the underground garage from 2019. So it's not a big surprise that those numbers are there. What is the surprise is the savings that you at 15 million if you do no underground garage, right? So what again was your above ground garage cost per space? Was 7 to 15,000? What you remember?
We didn't run an analysis, but on doing above ground parking, but normally above ground parking is somewhere in the 15 to 25,000
Okay,
space.
50 to 25.
Yes.
I had one number right.
Hard
I just
construction costs,
I was
yes.
just going the wrong way on the other number.
Yeah, that all
Okay.
depends on the, any kind of external features you decide to add on the outside of the facade of the garage. That's what starts driving some of the costs.
And our current ordinance requires wrapping
Wrapping.
the
Yeah,
parking garage. So the current garage would not be approved under current standards.
Yeah, let me add on to that a little bit. Yeah, you couldn't build it as you have it today. So you would have to have that wrap. We're looking at the First Bank property along Columbia. That second building has a parking garage and 3 floors of office that wrap it. It's less than half of the number of spaces that we have in this garage. It's not exactly the same size, but it's fairly close from an envelope. I would just eyeball on it, I would say. So that does cut into your available spaces, usable spaces. It does add to the cost because you got to build that and provide that shell space. It's another issue to manage and work with. I do agree the big point here is that you're working with land you own. Because once we get into acquiring land to then build it, you got to look at the location. Is it convenient? And as it kind of came up in the joint conceptual workshop last week, free parking is the question. There's a lot of parking. It's just what's free is where there's the competition and the tension. We know that the paid lots and the paid structured parking is readily available, but people want to go to and gravitate, understandably, to the free spaces. So that's another part of this dynamic too. Is you look at what you keep free, what you consider pay parking, that kind of thing is always something to consider as well, which would be a very different dialogue.
didn't mean to interrupt, but you were spot on, and I think we should consider, if we do go this route, I mean, this is prime parking on the square. I wouldn't be in favor of charging for parking in our existing decks, but I don't know if that has ever even been considered about charging for the deck underneath City Hall if we did the 200 full route to help offset some of the cost. Nominal something, but it's where most cities, if you, and I talked to someone from Greenville, and everything, most everything there's paid. And certain weekends they make it free to entice people to come down. But they're in a different dynamic than we are. The demand is here. They were trying to entice demand by making free parking because they started out with everything paid. I think there's something to be said there, and I've said, the market dynamics of parking downtown leave little for us to do, but that could also help. I don't know. I would be willing. I'd want to hear from the public on that too, and want to hear from the other board members. But 200, I'm leaning towards what, the 100 or the 200 full on. But thinking about, like you said, having that maybe being paid parking.
I've got a book I'll share with you in my office called The High Price of Free Parking.
Yep,
We're paying it right now.
yep, yeah.
So,
Well, some of us can remember when there was, that out front was not free parking.
meters.
You had meters, that's right.
Alderman Berger?
Yep. So, you don't. So I know that we'll have sufficient amount of parking for our employees. I'm not concerned with that because we're providing that and we'll have sufficient amount. But the squabble you hear all the time in this city is we need more parking. And will the city build another parking garage? Well, we are. This is what we're doing. And we're addressing not only the need of City Hall, but we're addressing the needs of the downtown community. It's our robust community. We have all this tourism going on here. We have a ton of activity going on here. And if we want to keep that healthy, we're going to be able to provide more and more parking. This is the answer right now. We don't have the luxury to go out here and find a green field anywhere downtown to park and to erect a new, very, very, very expensive, and you're right, Matt, in the future it's going to be $1 trillion, to do this stuff. And so we're going to be spending, and boards are going to say, why didn't you see the future and do this? So I'm going with the current design because I think it's a smart thing to do. I know it's expensive, but you cannot spend, in the future, it's going to be a whole lot more money. And we have a broader obligation to this city because people continue to ask us to build these parking garages and do things. Well, it's limited. Where are you going to go unless you want to go out in the South 40 and bust people in? And that doesn't answer our problem either. So frankly, I don't care. It's nice we're going to have a park there and everything. That's fine, but I don't want any changes. Let's make sure that we have enough parking and that we're doing the parking correct. And I think for the future as well, we're finding out study after study after study. If you pick up the Wall Street Journal, pick up anything today, and find out about the research and studies. The people are begging. These companies are begging for people to come back to work because they're feeling a lack of the work culture. They're missing the camaraderie of the work culture. They are missing out on they have less effective meetings when they have them through Zoom and at home. When you're sitting across from people, you see their expressions, you know that. I mean, on Zoom, yeah, that's better than over the phone. But digital infrastructure may be a problem, but less effective meetings and lack of the work culture are bringing people back to work. We are human beings. We crave relationships. And large companies are trying to do everything they can to get people back into the offices. Now, we're going to always have remote work, and we're going to be able to have more remote work than we ever had before, but people are coming back into the office and not staying out all week as well. So I think those things that we have to look and see what's the research being done on it, what are the projections being done on that for the future as well. So I don't think we're overbuilding at all. Thanks.
Ready to move on?
What was the guidance? What would, I mean, I guess, do you know what, I'm sorry to.
I do not.
Yeah.
I heard some interest in A, but also some, sympathy towards the current. So I can bring it to you to give us direction next meeting, or you can give it to us now. So however you want to.
Can I provide some input here?
Sure, go
Perhaps,
ahead.
and maybe this summarizes the board's thoughts and maybe not. I think that option B and C are off the table based on what I've heard tonight. And I don't see anybody saying, no, let's stay with one of those. I think that option A is of interest, but I also think that option current is of high interest because it seems like there is a demand from our community for more parking that is city funded in this downtown market. I would be open to learning more about option A if we could look at a real world cost analysis of what a deck that could serve the downtown community would cost, given our current structure and current structural requirements, and what we could potentially gain from that, and where potentially you could put it. I know there's a big piece of property down Columbia, but it would seem silly to put a parking deck maybe in that much space. But you bring up a good point, Eric, in that given our current requirements to get the same number of spots that we have over here, we'd have to have a much larger envelope that we'd be building in. And in addition to that, I heard earlier during the conversation, potential to expand or change the Second Avenue garage. Is that a possibility? Can you go up? What's the limit on height of a parking structure? And then is there even a real possibility to modify that garage?
We can get you more of a specific answer on that. I know we did at one point explore that was there the potential to add one more level?
Yeah.
Then you do get into the height issues, et cetera. And I'm not sure that it's built for that either. We'd need to validate that, but we can give you some background on
There was definitely something that.
what ours could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did some exploration a few years ago, and a few years ago may mean 4 or 5 even, for areas we might put an additional garage, and we did explore some with the Church of Fourth Avenue Church of Christ, and the requirement to wrap that building, my memory serves me correct, created such little parking space, it wasn't reasonable. And also, I think the church is very, very satisfied with their
Church was not
current
interested.
situation. And then we looked at other properties, trying to find a property that was big enough that would make an impact, and I don't recall finding any
It's both the
property.
size and the location.
Yeah.
I mean, if you find a location, that's the challenge.
There's no location.
And then you get into land costs and
This is it.
those pieces.
Yeah.
So we can give you at least a more specific assessment of what we've got and what our options are with what's there, and give you at least that piece as a background.
Vice Mayor, you going to sum it up?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to sum it up, but I'm going to ask more of a process question. So 2 items here. Are these the 2 items? Are there more value engineering items to come? Because I guess part of what I'm trying to understand here is we've had this debate about this garage.
Yes.
I mean, we've literally debated whether it would be a full garage or a half garage or
Right.
whatever. So I feel like the second item you're bringing in, don't take this in a negative, but I feel like we've had this discussion. Maybe the cost have changed, but the second item you're bringing is something we've debated pretty hardly, and I think we all said we wanted the full garage. Maybe in the context of a savings, maybe it's smart to have that discussion again. But I guess what I'm trying to understand is, are there more value engineering ideas that you're going to bring? Is it going to be piecemeal? Because is there another place for 8 million?
That visitors.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. That's helpful, because if you're saying that this is all that's
Yeah.
to be valued engineered, then man, that 8 million sounds really big to me right now. But if you're saying you're going to keep coming back throughout this process, maybe there's other places to keep taking
Yeah.
bites at this apple.
There will be continual
Many.
process items continues come up throughout the design process, and even through the construction. When they're in construction, items will pop up and we can go with this material or this material for decisions for value engineering. These 2 items were to really help drive the schedule of the design to go forward at the time.
We need this answer so things can keep moving. As we've talked about, time is a huge cost driver.
One.
There's the,
Go ahead, and then I'll get all of them.
Okay. So if we've got the 200 space garage and we drop it down to 100, there's 7 million in savings. What is the 200 space? Because it's been 8 million on our budget. What is it? How much is it? Size 15. 15?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, roughly
So
50.
they
All right,
said-
so by dropping just by dropping 100 or making it half, you're dropping the 8 billion out of it. I'm just sitting there trying to figure what we're savings and what the advantages is, or what the advantages is to going to that. And I guess I would be somewhat concerned or question if we've gone from 8 million to 15 million. But it hasn't, as far as I know, it has not shown up on any of the budget numbers that we've used, because we've been using 99 million for quite some time. It's been 8 million for that. Then we had the employee relocation numbers 2 or 3 weeks ago. And if I remember, that was about 4 million to 8 million. Well, that was in at 2.5 million when we first.
Yeah, well, a couple things.
Okay, go ahead.
The parking garage that you're referring to was originally put in the CIP as a generic parking structure in downtown. It was not a subsurface city hall necessarily
So you just put it as a
project.
placeholder,
It was
but
a,
put
it
that
was a,
number.
yeah, there was a recognition by the board that we would need to look at some additional structured parking in downtown. And that was a number that was identified and put in the 10-year plan. As we looked at it in City Hall, as a project evolved and this option, then those two got kind of blended together.
And they should
So,
have.
yeah, that was just sort of, and it was land we controlled. It seemed like the most effective way to use money towards the parking garage to blend it with the City Hall project. So that's how that came about. The other thing, the range of cost was somewhere between the 2.5 million and 7 million, I think, is what we had put in that planning, that schematic design driven planning number. We're now honing in on something that's a little less than 4, between 3 and 4. So that's still to be negotiated, but there'll be some work on that. And, we've had a chance to walk through it with our team and feel good about how it can meet our needs, which is good. But then we've got to finalize terms and get that back to you for a final decision there as well. But that's in the realm
But that's it.
of that project budget that we've been planning on.
I just want to say real quick, doesn't mean in the future, too, that we cannot charge for parking. We don't do so today, but in the future, other boards might want to charge for parking eventually and reap some of that money
So,
back.
What is the wish of the board? Are you able to, I understand Alderman Berger, can you give a little indication of which direction they should continue to move forward and bring back to us?
Mayor, we may have another.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Pardon me, I just wanted to make one more comment for clarification. We brought these two forward because they're critical to moving the design forward. They do also represent two of the largest potential savings. So we'll keep coming back to you with savings, but outside parking is the biggest bite of the apple we're ever going to be able to make. So I want to set expectations on that.
Yeah, you're not going to see a bunch of $8 million items.
This is at $75,000. This is real quick, Mayor. This is $75,000 a spot, basically.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard from the development community, talked to some contractors, who feel like that's kind of a high number. Do you believe that is a conservative number at $75,000 a spot? I'm doing 15 million divided by 200. Do you feel like that there is a possibility that we might actually get some savings in the bid process if we just go with the full? Because I'm inclined to answer the mayor's question, to go the 200. The 7 million is also very enticing, but I feel like there might be some savings still on that, some meat on that bone. Or maybe there's not.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to predict at this point, but I think that's a conservative number. Everything we're going to bring to you is going to be conservative. We're not going to try to present something that's a stretch. But what I would also say is that the 200 does make it harder for the contractor to work the site. And we mentioned that in the briefing. There is no laydown site, there's no staging on site until the garage is built. That does create more complexity. You're likely going to see an increase generally in the price for City Hall because they cannot work on site. So that's something to keep in mind. And then additionally, there would be more impacts to the surrounding streets as the project gets out of the ground, because there isn't a way to bring a concrete truck onto the site. It would have to be in the street. So we just want to make sure everyone's aware of it. And that was another reason we wanted to bring it early on, because it is sort of fundamental to how people are going to approach the project.
You think we might have more street closings then, right?
There would have to be impacts to traffic around City Hall because there is no way to bring trucks off of the street. They'd have to be on the street. Just being transparent.
I would go on record of saying that I'd rather save the 7 million. I think that life is going to change a lot throughout the years, and I would rather take the cost savings, and 100 spots is a really benefit more than we have today. And I think when you look at the whole shebang, I would take the money.
From this end, I'd rather see the 7 million savings. So that's mine for right now. So
Door number one. Anybody else for door number one? Alderman Caesar?
We don't know how many staff park currently in the garage right now.
We can get you a pretty good number on that. I don't have it at my fingertips,
Is it
but
200 or is
it's at least half of what you see in that 300 space garage. I would make an educated guess.
I have a hard time believing the full garage is 15 and half of it's half. Because you spend a lot of your money just getting off the launch pad a little bit. And so I'd expect for us, if we're going to go down by 50, it's probably not, we're probably going to spend a lot of the money just digging the site. And then to get the extra square footage for those spots is probably not going to be that significant of a savings, would be my assumption. Now, you guys do this for, and staging isn't going to be for 20 years. It's going to be for how many months? 6 months, 8 months?
oh no, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, for quite a significant portion of the project, it would be impacted because they're digging from property line to property line on all edges. So, yes, the excavation is, you're already out there, you're already mobilized. So you're right, the mobilization costs are going to be there, but the complexity of managing that on site, there's a cost to that. And there's a loss of efficiency and productivity that the contractor will build into their pricing for that.
Because you have to have a laydown spot, and then you have to transport to and from
Yeah,
and work with the
right.
project.
And so
the entire
that's,
thing is
so the
exposed.
productivity is the piece that we're, again, conservatively trying to present
And
as an option.
I think for me, we're building a 100-year building here. And you start with a basement, and you can't build the rest of the project until you start with the basement. And I have a hard time believing that in the future, parking spaces will be easier to come by in the downtown area. I have a real hard time believing that, whether it's paid or free. I think even some of the surface lots are likely going to be non-parkable at some point in the future. And I think that in 25 years, we'll look back and say, gosh, that was $7 million. It was a bargain. And potentially, even you'd have folks who have businesses down here may choose to rent a reserved spot that's protected underground to keep their vehicles safe from hail damage. Who knows if we could have a hailstorm in town anymore. So there.
Alderman Peterson, you want to opine?
In thinking about that this would keep any other work being done, what about the place for the park out here in the back? It's so the underground is not going to be over the entire plot, is it?
Talking about
The
staging
entire
there.
footprint of the City Hall building.
For the 200.
I know, but I mean, I'm saying though, don't we, if we're talking about the park back here, that part is the part that's going to become the park is not going to be a part of where.
They're saying it
In other words, you could use it for
In
staging.
the current design, it is supported by the parking garage.
It's a park on top
So
of
it's a
Oh, you're
podium,
kidding
a park
me.
is on a podium
Yeah.
that is part of the parking garage on that Church Street end.
So you can't
When
use
you- when
it
you
for
think-
staging.
No,
Yeah.
not when you're digging lot line
Not
to
when
lot
you're
line,
gonna be
it'd
under
very
it, yeah,
difficult. So
I
when
get
you
it.
look at that side of the parking garage, you've got different aspects of thermal blocks that are being
Yeah,
taken place.
it wouldn't
for-
work,
so-
yeah.
That's interesting.
Did you want to finish up on a comment, Alderman Caesar?
I've said a lot tonight, and I think the final question, so yes, Mayor, if I could. The final question is, will the area under the park be the definite area that we would jettison to get the savings in spaces? And have we looked underneath to make sure there's not some other obstruction that makes it more cost-effective to put the parking garage in a different orientation?
Get rid of the park and park up front.
Yes, that would be you would keep the parking garage under the building itself. And we still don't have a borings to know exactly what's underneath there at that time either.
How about if you took the park and put a parking garage on the park?
Just be wrapped.
Yeah, you don't have enough space. We've researched that. There's not enough.
Still not enough space?
It's not, yeah. With the limited space you have there, it's not an efficient way to build parking.
Vice Mayor.
I'm inclined to stay the course. I think we're making a long-term, 100-year decision here.
Amen.
And I get the money. I hope there's more savings to be found. But I feel like a short-sighted decision now is going to bite us later on. Although I will say, I had not really contemplated that concept of how in the world we're going to work this site. I would certainly love I want to keep this moving, but I would love to know sort of, okay, if that's the case, we're going to go full in on the full parking. What is our plan for, how do we actually get this done? I would really love to know what that's going to look like, because if that becomes a complete disaster
Square might be a triangle.
for downtown, then I might be inclined to think differently about what we're doing, but that is a new piece of information I hadn't really thought about, to be honest with you.
No, I think by going with the our professional opinion is going with the CMAR route, you're a step ahead of the game in that planning aspect compared to just bringing a contractor in and they just decide to do it. This actually, your general contractor will sit down and explains the means and methods of where they're going to structure the site, and then the owner, the board has, guidance on, we really, out of these three options, you're talking about coming in on a site, this option really works better for the city in the methodology. So I think you're a step ahead by actually going in that direction to help ease your question. And as we get further, we can develop that site. Even during the selection process, the contractor, most of them will probably come in with, I think it's in the RFP, is the methodology of how they're going to work the site.
You know, the staging, I don't know, it's just thought, whenever we're across the street here, we have an alley that goes through behind the old courthouse. You take and keep that alley open from that side and shut it down from here to the square. They don't have to get into the side of the old courthouse on that side. They can go through the front door and then walk there. They don't have to park there. They could have that space. That could literally be shut down and not impact any businesses there for the time you need it.
Were you going to opine as far as which way you're leaning, Alderman Peterson, or do you want to keep?
I'm still listening.
Okay.
I didn't share my exact, mine would be to stay the course. I'm enticed by the 7 million. I do think we'll want the extra 100, but I actually think that we can get it for cheaper than 75,000 a spot. And I would, if you showed me where we could say that the real cost is going to be $3 million less because it doesn't cost $75,000 to go underground and build 200 spots, which I just think there's some, more meat on the bone there, and I would encourage us I would take the 200 with a 10% discount or 20% discount on the number we're using once we get the CMAR involved. So don't want to change the course, but I would encourage whoever that is to hone in on that number, because I think it's happening for cheaper in the market.
Ready to move on?
So what is the opinion of which way you're going?
Well, I think that the trend is to hold the course, but it's still close.
Well, then you may have to break the tie, Mayor.
Oh, I love breaking the
I
tie.
thought you might,
So,
yeah.
that
And of course, there's only 7 of us here, so we can't.
I don't
tie.
think it's, well, I don't know. Somebody might have to go to the bathroom.
That's
So-
true.
All right, how about item number 4, declaring the city hall will adopt the 5th-year annual action plan for community development block grant funding for the city of Franklin, Tennessee. Any questions about that? Are we gonna,
Anything?
it was a great report.
We're staying the course.
Item number 5, we don't have enough information to continue to move that item forward right now, so we're gonna put that off to a future date.
We'll bring that to you at another June meeting. We need some more information from the partnership group.
So item 6 is discussion on fire department compensation plan.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. I'll kick this off. I have leadership from the fire department here with me as well, and I'm sure they'll be glad to chime in on certain topics or elements of this. This is a continuation of the review and discussion we've had around compensation, especially as it relates to our public safety team. And I'll cover some of this. I've got a number of slides. I'll try to move through it pretty quickly. Some of this is ground we covered when we talked about police pay back in April. So this will not be totally unfamiliar to you, but you will see it applied to the context of the fire department. So again, walking through this, in the fiscal 23 budget in 2022, we adopted a comprehensive pay plan update, and that brought us at that time to a highly competitive position in the market. That was an additional cost in terms of budgetary impact of over $8 million. To put that in context, a typical budget has about $3 million in pay increases. So the board and the city really stepped up when that plan was put in place. 79% of our team members had their pay grades increased by 1 or even 2 pay grades across the organization. We followed that up the following year with an additional adjustment of about $1.3 million to address compression issues across the organization. Collectively, over half of those dollars and those 2 initiatives went into the public safety realm, police and fire. There also was activity in the current budget. We didn't talk a lot about it when we adopted the budget, but it was very much present, and Chief Johnson was a key part of that, where we made some adjustments related to the market position for the position of engineer, the position of lieutenant, and some others. The next slide will go into a little more detail on that. We also wanted a structure that incentivized and rewarded folks who stepped up in those leadership roles of lieutenant, where they're supervising and leading our team. So collectively, we have seen the market move in the last 18 months, and we've especially honed in on the need to look at this comprehensively within the public safety group. This will follow on a comprehensive pay plan update in next year's budget, but we've gone ahead and moved forward with this review in public safety, and I'll walk through where we stand with fire. I referenced what we did in this year's budget. Again, 70 fire department personnel were impacted across 6 different positions. There's about $225,000 of investment. We moved the fire engineer position up a pay grade. We moved up a pay grade for inspector, information systems analyst, life safety educator. Those moved up a pay grade and also received a 3% bump. In addition to the merit and market increases that happened across the board for all employees. And then fire lieutenant was also moved up a pay grade, but we also started that position deeper in the pay grade at the first quartile to have a greater differentiation between the lieutenant and other positions, specifically the engineer position, again, to reward folks who are stepping up in that leadership role. So we made those adjustments within the lieutenant rank. There were also 4 fire captains that were impacted just to keep a differentiation between those ranks as well. So 70 folks were impacted by initiatives we did in pay in this budget that I don't want to lose track of that important movement that happened. There's a lot on this chart. I'll just suffice it to say, this is an analysis of what we see in terms of applications and how that's worked. I'll just sort of point up here. I think it's really important to look at the bottom line of what's coming out at the end. And we've modified our approach to use more lateral transfer or lateral hires as part of our philosophy, and sort of separating that out from folks who are at the entry level or the cadet, where they go through the significant initial training. And so you'll see we're getting fewer in the front end, but we are converting a higher percentage into hireable folks, okay, if you will. And we do, you'll see this later in a slide, we do have a higher bar for lateral transfers than almost anybody, really than anybody we've seen in the market. And I think that's nothing to apologize for. I think that's good. But so it's just a different setup. We're differentiating laterals from the entry level. So you see these large numbers at 200, 300, but you're only converting, in some cases, 20 to 30 or maybe 40%. And now we're differentiating that more. We're having a more precise recruitment, and you're converting more in the 80 to 90% because we're bringing in people we know can meet the standard. So it's just a different philosophy in terms of how we are recruiting, and we still are seeing good interest. The market is more competitive. That's why we're talking about pay. Well, it requires less from us because they walk in with firefighter 1, firefighter 2, 300 plus hours of training, and at least a baseline of EMT certification or more. It does, yeah. So let me keep moving through some of this. One of the other things we analyzed was turnover overall. This, you see the last 4 years of turnover, and we did differentiate an overall number with then what we pulled out, which were more voluntary resignation types. So these are folks that we wanted to keep that left, that weren't retirements. So we didn't want to factor in folks that were here 25, 30 years. These are folks that left. We do exit interviews. We had about 33% mentioned pay as a factor. As a point of comparison, when we talked to police folks who've left, that was a little higher, 46% there as a factor in their departure from the city. So this is where we are today in terms of pay structure. We bring in a entry-level person or fire cadet at $47,700. We bring in a lateral who meets those 4 requirements you see in the middle column at $53,600. And then you'll see the pay stipends. This is an important element. Two or 3 years ago, we updated this as well to be more competitive with folks who have specialized training that is of much value to us. Specifically, paramedics, they receive a pay stipend of $11,500. That is actually converted into an hourly rate. So when they work overtime, they get it at a higher rate relative to their status as a certified paramedic. We also created a different level or a level of stipend for the AEMT, which is the high-level EMT certification at $5,000. Again, also applies to overtime because it's in their hourly rate. So that's where we stand today. Let's look at the comparisons as we walk through the market as we summarized it. Well, first of all, compared to our current target, which is the 75th percentile, we're pretty much there. We're at or above it with the benchmark that we're working off of today.
I thought we wanted to be at 90th.
Well, that's where I'm getting to. That's where I'm getting to. The current target is 75th. When we pull it to 90th, again, this is base pay. This is nothing with stipends. You'll see we're short, especially in the 4 ranks of cadet, firefighter, engineer, and lieutenant. We're a little bit below. We consider when you're above 95%, you're pretty close to the market number, but in those, we're below that. So this is in base pay. This doesn't include stipends. So when we apply this again to the 75th percentile measure and then factor in stipends, 72% of our team members that are on shift receive one of these 2 stipends already. So they're already there, which is a good thing. We want that higher level of training and capacity there. When we factor that in, we're well above the 75th percentile. So now going to the new target, when we do that as well, you see these same numbers we shared with you before. And when we factor in the stipends, we're pretty close. We're not quite all the way there, but we're pretty close.
Do the comparators include stipends as well?
They do. Yeah, they do as best we can summarize them. And I'll show you that as we go through some of the charts. So let's go through the base pay. This is similar to the charts you saw with police. We've got 16 possible agencies that we're comparing against. Not all of them have all the same structure. So for example, with cadets, we could only find 12 in the region. We added Germantown, which is not really in the region, but a high-performing department that is in Tennessee, that we added them as a comparative point. You'll see we're number 4 out of the 12 that we saw with a similar cadet type of rank with our current structure. So 4th out of 12 in this measurement. When you look at base fire pay, we're kind of right in the middle. We're 6th out of 14 in this example in terms of, again, base pay compared to these other departments across our region. So when you factor in the AEMT stipend, that's the $5,000 annualized stipend for our firefighters, then we end up in the top 3 with that compared to the market. With existing structure with that $5,000 stipend, that again, 72% of our folks on shift have either the AEMT or the paramedic. So when we do paramedic, you'll see us again in that 3rd position, pretty close to Metro, just a tick below them. You'll see Wilson County has really gotten aggressive with hiring paramedics. It's been their approach. So a couple other pay categories that just are interesting and important comparisons. You look at what's called step-up pay. This is when folks work in a higher rank. So say a firefighter steps in and fills the role of an engineer for a shift or a half a shift. We have a threshold that once they work 3 shifts, they get that step-up pay. We found that we are one of only 4 in our comparative market that provides it at any level. We do it at a lower level than all but one. We do it after 3 shifts. Others do it at 10, which is what we used to do several years ago. We converted it, lowered it down to 3 as a threshold. You see Clarksville's all the way up at 30. Mount Juliet has, I think, 2, but theirs is not as generous a pay bump for when folks step up. So we're in a minority, but it's a good place to be in terms of rewarding folks when they step up and serve at a higher level. In terms of supporting EMS certification, training, et cetera, we're on the right side of this one too. Is if you ask me, around 40% pay for EMS school for their employees. We're in that group. You'll see others don't do it at all in the orange. The yellow is folks who do some version of paying back or using training to help provide some of it, but not the full payment that we do for folks. We pay for them to go to school to get the EMT certifications or the paramedic certifications. So then when we look at the comparison, this is what we talked about in terms of our bar is a little higher for lateral transfers. We have 4 components. You'll see our competition have 3, 2, or 1. So that's just how we've decided to do it, to have that higher bar where it's EMT or above certification. It is 320 hours of academy study completed, and also the certification for both Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2. So you'll see that's kind of how we compare to others, that we do have a little higher bar. When you look at call loads or workload, when you look at it by station, we're kind of right in the middle in terms of the number of calls per station when you look at our comparative set. So that just gives you some context there. All right, so this is just an overview of what we've learned from where we are today. We easily meet and exceed the previous benchmark of 75th percentile. We have 4 in base pay that are a little below the market in several positions, but with stipend, they're at or above. They're pretty competitive. When you look at AEMT and paramedic pay, we're pretty consistently in the top 3 for firefighter, paramedic, and for the AEMT, and top 6 for the firefighter pay. And then you see also that we do have other ability in terms of step-up pay and EMS training. We are on the high end of paid leave, and that we apply overtime to everything that folks do when they step up, when they're in the stipend range. Those are all favorable for us. That all puts us in that top 3 or 4 in terms of earning potential that is in the structure. All right, so let's look at the proposal that we think moves us to where we need to be in the 90th percentile and in the market overall. Here's what we would propose, and it seems that entry level is where the biggest challenge is right now. And so we would move to 55,000. We would propose to move to 55,000 for the cadet for the entry level. And for the laterals, we would move to 60,000. We would continue to have the same requirement in terms of those laterals and that reward that is there when they meet all of those elements going from cadet into firefighter, that piece would be there. We would also pair this with the creation of a public safety pay structure for both fire department pay scale and police department pay scale. In implementing it, we would provide a 2% bump or the minimum of the new pay grades, whichever is greater. We would also apply that in the engineer, captain, fire battalion chief, EMS officer, assistant fire marshal would all move into their new pay, these newly established pay grades, and whichever is greater. We would maintain that differentiation that we established last year with the lieutenant rank and the non-supervisory folks below there, meaning they start at the first, we'd continue to start them at the first quartile. We think that's a positive reward and incentive for people to step up and pursue promotion and a higher level of leadership. right, so let's see how this rolls through the market comparisons. This puts us at the top right with Metro in terms of cadet pay. So again, only 12 have that, but this puts us right there with Metro at the top at 55. For firefighter base pay, this also puts us at the top at 60,000, just a little bit above Germantown, Metro, in that area as well. They're all, you see 3 or 4 that are above 55,000, but not quite to 60 yet. When you factor in the AEMT, we continue to be right there at the very top, 65,000 there with that component in place that, again, we've had in place for about 3 years in terms of that stipend. When you do paramedic pay, we are just below Wilson County. When you factor in that 11,500 of paramedic pay, which is where it's really competitive, we are second, a little bit below Wilson County, but pretty strongly ahead of the rest of the field. All right, so how does this ripple through the comparison to the 90th percentile? You'll see it pretty much puts us there compared to the 90th percentile at 100 or a little above, or just a tick below 100,000, so 100%. So across the board, we pretty much hit the target on base pay of getting to the 90th percentile for fire. When we add in the stipend consideration, it puts us a little higher. We're above 100 on all of them, and you'll see that range there. A little higher on captain compared to market, but that's a little more of a comparison of how we compare to others in the rank. I think that drives that a little more than the market consideration here, but makes sense in the whole structure. All right, so the summary of what we've proposed is changing the pay scale to hit the 90th percentile target. We've already done that in police. We would do that in fire. We'd do that through the base pay as a baseline. This would provide for a salary increase of 2% or across the board, which does reduce the risk of compression beyond the real entry-level folks. And so this would also provide for us being the top pay in terms of firefighter, cadet, firefighter. And then when you factor in the stipends, we're pretty much at the top with the exception of one competitor in paramedic pay. To implement this, the cost would be $405,000 as an annualized cost. And we would propose implementing it with the June pay cycle, which starts June 9th. So you wouldn't see this to vote on it till next meeting, which is June 11th, but we can retro that to that date and make that effective the first pay period. And again, firefighters work on a 28-day pay cycle that starts June 9th. So that's essentially what we proposed. We've got a few other things we're still working on from the previous discussion and some things that are still part of this. We need to look at the chief positions and the assistant and deputy chief positions in both police and fire. So we're continuing to look at that. We are looking at administrative and non-shift personnel to make sure we're highly competitive, non-sworn folks in police. There's some additional review. Just discussed some of that last week, and there are adjustments that we think we can make within the existing pay structure that keeps us competitive there, and also that we're not just only taking care of sworn personnel, we're looking at the whole team within those departments. And then, as we talked about before, we would move towards, when we do the comprehensive pay plan update a year from now in the budget, we look at what it takes to apply that same target across the organization, and that'll be a budget decision for you to look at as we develop next year's budget, the fiscal 26 budget. We have continued to work through the differentiation between police lieutenant and police sergeant. Again, making some progress there. It would work within the existing pay structure that we're talking about, the public safety pay structure. It would, right now, what we're considering, still doing some due diligence, would be something pretty similar to what we did in fire, lieutenant relative to engineer, where there's a higher, you start deeper in the pay grade to create a little more space between the ranks that help address that. And so that's still something we're vetting and working on, but that's what's on the table to address that topic in terms of ongoing work. Just wanted to give you that update, and that kind of covers the basics. Got Chief Johnson here and Chief King to talk a little more and add anything else they'd like to anything I may have missed along the way. I gave you a lot in a short time, but really important information. And this has been something we've worked side by side on with our HR team and with our budget team to look at how we can accommodate this. And again, we've built this capacity to handle this proposed adjustment and what's proposed for the fiscal 25 budget, as well as the balance of the last month of this fiscal year. So I'll stop there, answer any questions you have, or Chief Johnson or Chief King, please feel free.
Vice Mayor, do you want to say something, Chief? Or are you just ready to answer?
I'm just ready to go.
Vice Mayor.
All right, few comments, few questions. So first of all, I am a fan, or I'm an advocate of looking at police and fire separately, as well as separately from the rest of staff. I know that's not always been the case. I appreciate you doing it that way. I appreciate you looking at it that way. I don't think we're in an environment where the tit for tat really works. These are all important. First responders are all important public safety folks, but I think we have to keep continuing to look at them in terms of what the market is doing. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate you saying that we have more work to do on the police side, because there are a few places where we still have some work to do. There's no question there. So first question, Chief, what's the current open positions, and what do we think our attrition is next year due to retirements and stuff like that? Not asking you to predict voluntary, but what is the attrition for next year?
I don't know the exact number of openings with overfills included, but it's probably in the 2 to 3 range.
Okay.
As far as is it?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Okay.
we're pretty much fully set.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I thought.
I mean, we're talking, 2 or 3 spots with the overfills. As far as what we're anticipating in the future, a lot of it depends on what happens in the pay. Not only are we trying to recruit, but we're also trying to retain. I'm trying to retain our firefighters that are hitting 25 years. I don't want them leaving. I want them staying. So a lot of that has to do with what steps are taken next in order to develop this pay plan. And
So-
I think we're heading in the right direction.
And the other piece I should have said this, these folks will still get in July 1,
Thank
the
you.
market increase of 3% that's
Yep.
proposed in that budget, plus the merit piece that goes up to another 2.5%, plus the new longevity component that they will get in November as a flat rate based on years in service. So $50 a year up to $1,500 that they'll get in November. So all of those pieces will still apply to everybody that's getting the adjustments we've talked about here.
Thank you for saying that. That was question number 3
okay,
on
sorry.
action in July.
Jumped
So
ahead.
thank you. Saved me a question. So I had a feeling we were almost fully staffed. So that leads to my question, which is, on the police side, the priority was recruitment. Not saying retention was still not a big deal, but priority was recruitment. We still need to fix a few things to make sure we don't lose some great people. On the fire side, I did feel that it was, again, not brushing over recruitment, we need to retain. When you look at this whole package, all of the extras does feel like I get to work for an ISO, I get to work in Franklin, I've got all of these add-ons. This does look to get them to a really great place. But I would love that's just me reading numbers on a page. Is that material enough? And do you imagine that makes an impact on your retention, or have we not gone far enough?
I think it's something that we have to continue to work on. Because as soon as this meeting's over, there's other departments that are watching this tonight. And as soon as we walk out the door, they're going to be matching us. So, and this is the same as in police departments. So it's a very fluid and dynamic system. And that's why, we're a proponent of that separation of the public safety pay scale. We are doing a lot of great things. We want Franklin to be a destination department. We want to recruit and retain these individuals that we're bringing in. We want them to have a long career here. It's going to be a continuous work in progress. We can't just do something and then sit by for 3 or 4 months, 6 months and not do anything. It's something we have to keep our eye on the ball. And our staff, as long as our city leadership, that's something that we're always doing. And I just like to say I appreciate all the support that I get from this body. There's a lot of people that wish they were sitting in my position with the support that they have. So thank you very much.
I think for me, one of the deciding factors was that idea that it's going to continue to be challenging and fluid. And so having it where we can see it directly and we can see where the changes are happening. We've responded every year in the last 3 budgets, we've done something. So it's not like we're sitting on our hands, but it does draw attention to it. And it does make it very clear where we need to respond and what those needs are, whether it's on the front end of getting people in or whether it's retaining people down the line. And Chief and his team have done a great job of creating that ladder and that incentive for people to continue to grow and develop, which is exactly what we want.
My final comment is this, that I have sort of the same opinion that I had on the police side, which is if we were doing this in November, October, with a full, half of the year to go, it would be one thing, but because we're doing this right before July, so we're gonna make a move here in June, similar to police, we're gonna hit it again in July. I'll say what I said on the police one, which is I'd like to see September, when the dust settles, what does that actually look like? When you actually added the July to the June on both the fire and the police, what did that actually materially do, especially for those people who may have gotten an increase due to merit or whatever, like beyond just the regular. So what does that actually look like? And then sit down and have that conversation in September. Hey, we made 2 moves on fire and police in advance of the pay. We increased the pay. Now here's what that full picture looks like. Do we feel like we're in the right place that we want to be? And to your point, continue to monitor that, because there may be adjustments needed. But because we're buttoned up against the July, I feel good that we're going to have 2 shots at this with these guys. So.
Alderman Blanton.
You're so diplomatic, and I respect you for that. So, couple of things. I'm very excited about combining public safety as in that way. So, thank you for that. I have had some feedback and frustration that 2% is not the 3%, and when you look at entry level, it's not comparable totally. I understand the stipend being part of what you're wanting to kind of layer on top to show the potential of earning. And while 72% is a really large number, it's still not going to hit everyone. And I would love for us to see that the stipends are paid because they're going above and beyond. And so to me, to factor that into a conversation about base pay, I think it needs to be separated. I mean, I think we have made huge strides. So I'm grateful. I'm not at all saying that. And yes, there's other departments who will probably go, when is our turn? I think the difference here, and it's not to lessen anyone's job duty because we have an incredible staff across the board. Public safety is different because they literally put their lives on the line to serve our community and our guests. So it is a little bit different. I mean, I could leave here today and get hit by a car, but it's not in the line of duty. So I appreciate the 2%. I would rather it be a little bit more because I think what happens, and it's just the nature of the beast, it's a morale issue. And we've got police and fire in a situation now where they're coming, not that they haven't been, but the whole idea of doing this public safety group builds camaraderie within those departments even more so. It's the better way to say that. And it's been great to see them come together as a team and work on this initiative. But then as we split it apart, it feels like, okay, we're getting there, but we're just not quite there. So I'm appreciative, but I would like to see it be a little bit more balanced and take the stipend away and look at real base pay. Because I think the opportunity in police to do other things, SWAT or Swiftwater Rescue or all the other things that they can do is different than the stipends that are allowed in fire. So,
well, we did try to look at both those. And without the stipend, you hit the 90th percentile benchmark. You get there.
But when you talk about base pay entry level, it's 55 and 60 is where...
Which is the top of the market. I know. But yes, I hear what you're saying, but
I can't not say what I feel. I'm saying thank you, but I've also had some, conversations where we're getting there, but it's still a little bit of frustration. So,
Alderman Caesar.
I would echo what Alderman Brown and Blanton have said about the appreciation for a separate management of pay structure for our first responders. My question is more about slide 4. I think that's slide number 4, which shows the background lateral versus entry level. And if we go to that slide, you'll see that it doesn't show an entry level application period since January of 22. and my math's not great on this one, but that's 2.5 years almost. Is that accurate that we've not brought in entry-level fire personnel in 2.5 years?
That is correct. We were going through a time where we were losing people, and so the lateral process allowed us to fill those gaps immediately, with just a 3 to 4 week orientation. Once we realized that, we could get to a better place. We've got our internship program, so we're moving back.
Okay.
And so we're going to have a combination of both entry level and laterals to maintain that balance.
And you'll probably see, I would think you're going to see still some segregation of an entry level process and a lateral process. Chief's right, you can do the lateral quicker. So that's part of what we did there. And we're getting more creative. The internship is a great example of we're trying to find multiple pathways into serving and getting the best here in Franklin. And pay's part of it, but the pathways too are part of it too, and being highly competitive in both what we provide in pay, but also the quality of the work environment and support is important too.
And so I have an additional question about the 72%. Are we hiring people that are not AEMT or paramedics to do fire work today in Franklin?
Today, the minimum for a lateral is baseline EMT, and then when they come in as EMT, a lot of times they elect to go to the AEMT because of that stipend.
About how long does that take?
It depends. There's so many different programs out there. It could be a semester, or it could be a semester or 2-semester process, depending on which avenue you take. As far as the entry level, what we've done is you don't have to come in with the medical training, but you sign a contract that within 2 years of completion of your fire academy, that you will obtain EMT basic, and that is paid for by the city and conducted either at Nashville Fire Department or Columbia State.
And that's, I think, unique to Franklin. I don't know that there's a lot of fire services around that are doing that or raising the bar or have that level of qualification on their trucks. Is that fair to say?
We are very lucky to have the level of medical certification of paramedics, the AEMTs, on our apparatus. We're very fortunate that, and with us having the minimum as EMT, a lot of departments will go with just a basic first responder. So we are setting the standards high to be here in Franklin.
Alderman Baggett, then I'll go to Alderman Berger.
Thank you again for doing this. This is, I think everyone should, and those members of the fire and police should realize, I mean, this is abnormal to do this in the middle of the year like this. This is and so, Eric, thank you and the HR team for taking this on, because I'm very impressed that we have done this in the last 3 or 4 months. Shows that we're able to be nimble. But also within that, I think, this is kind of where I landed on the police is like, you kind of have to take the victories and then look towards the larger goal, which is a long-term structure that's sustainable and able to be more nimble quickly to adjust the market. And so while I do agree with Alderman Blanton that, look at, 2%, 3%, like I understand, I would love, more is always better, I guess. But when you're on the employee side or the firefighter side or the police side, but I really am more concerned about at this point is getting a structure set on a regular basis that is systematically or systemically set up for to address a lot of the compression issues that some may perceive or that used to be, but we've done a ton to prohibit or prevent a lot of that. I'm not like you're never going to bring us a pay plan that is not going to have some issues that have to be addressed.
Yeah.
Like I'm beginning to believe there is no perfect pay plan out there, because there's always going to be someone a little more adversely affected than others. And the desire is that we get it right.
Yep.
And I think having this separate pay structure plan or structure system will give us some tools to be able to manipulate that. And in public safety, where quite frankly our competitors are going to change it, their structure. And then we might see adverse effects in the next 2 or 3 months or 6 months, and before the 2-year pay review. Yeah. So, I like being at the top, and we are at the top here on what we're doing. I do think there's more work to be done, and I think that can really only be achieved with this separate pay structure, where we can be more nimble and it not be a big drawn out process like we've done back to back police and fire. Like it becomes kind of a normal thing where every 9 months or 6 months, we're not every 6 months, but every 9 months to a year, we're looking at the market on a regular basis. So we're not having to, we get ahead of the 8 ball. So I like this. I like being on the top. It looks like we're on the top now. Would I like 3%? I would like 3%. I would like 5%. I'd like everyone to be happy with exactly the difference in pay between everyone. But I think we have to get there. And so taking this to get to that point, if there's a commitment, and I think I saw on the slide, there is a commitment, I think, to go to the separate pay structure, right? I mean, I saw that.
That would be part of what we'd bring forward to you is establishing those new public safety pay scales.
In 26.
That would be going, no, that would be now. We would put that in place now. So we would adjust everybody. They would either get 2% or if they're not to the minimum of their new pay grade, to their new pay grade.
Okay.
But that's all factored in to that bottom line price that we get, cost that we
But
gave
the
you.
pay grades are still the citywide pay grades.
They are not.
No, they're not.
There will be.
This is this.
There will
Okay.
be fire
I
pay grades and
misunderstood
police
this.
pay grades.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for going ahead and doing that.
Yeah, so
but
that'll be
that
part
is
of
the
what we ask
structure.
you to approve.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I misunderstood that.
too.
But I think, yes, so that's all I've got to say. Thank you. I do think there's more work to be done, police and fire, but again, when you make these drastic changes in the middle of regular pay studies, there's going to be some issues. Thank you.
Alderman Berger.
I'm just going to say ditto to all that because that's part of my thinking as well in supporting the separate pay structure. I do have one question. You mentioned people come in with the EMT already, but then you mentioned that that we do train them. So what is it? Do they have to come in with EMT or can they come in and we still do train them?
As a lateral, they have to come in with EMT basic.
lateral.
Yes, ma'am. As a entry level, we would put them
Yes.
through school within a
We
2-year
still do
period.
that.
They have to
Okay.
get there in 2 years.
I just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Okay. Sound like we're ready to move to item number 7, which is ordinance 2024-19. The City of Franklin to amend Appendix A, Comprehensive Fees and Penalties, Chapter 17, Refuse and Trash Collection of the Franklin Municipal Code to increase the fees for collection of garbage and refuse, establishing a public hearing on June the 11th, 2024. And I assume that you're going to follow up with rolling into the 5-year plan for solid waste also. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll combine 7 and 8. This is on
Good.
both agendas tonight too, to just keep things moving along in parallel with the budget. We did answer a specific question that came up last time related to kind of the direct cost versus variable cost component of that service. And so staff can kind of walk you through that, but around about 85% of it is a fixed cost, just with the personnel and equipment that it takes to do collection. But I'll let Mark and Jack take you through that, and we'll be glad to answer any other questions you might have. But this is really taking the cost of service study and applying it so that this fund and this operation is self-sufficient. So Mark?
Sure, thank you. So you'll see a new attachment to your agenda, and it's the table that's up on the screen right now. And what we set out to do was try and figure out what that fixed cost was relative to the volumetric cost that we had talked about last time. Of course, the first column is the fiscal year. Second column is the expenditures minus the cost of residential hauling and disposal. So eliminating that cost from the analysis. Third column is related to non-residential revenue. When you have the difference between the second column and the third column, you end up with the residential rate requirement that we would need to see in order to recover all the expenditures minus the hauling and minus the disposal costs. So based on the number of residential accounts we currently have at the current disposal cost, we're looking at a cost for the hauling and disposal piece to be right at $1.3 million annually. And the portion of that rate is calculated at $4.36 for FY 25. So again, that's about 15% of the total cost of the rate at $31. So we just wanted to share that. I know there's the kids climbing on the garbage can and all that, discussion from the last time. But wanted to kind of put numbers to it because we had that question too when we were done with our conversation. So we are still proposing that option B, or the second option that we had talked about, that's in the ordinance. And of course, I know you all are going to have some feedback on that, provide us with some guidance. But just wanted to share this additional analysis we did between the last time and today, and would welcome any thoughts and comments.
This is set up to move in parallel with your budget decisions. It does have implications there, but the rates that are proposed do not go into effect till 1st of January. So that is a timeline, but the costs that we've identified that run the operation from a budget standpoint, that needs to keep moving, but the rate structure piece, would not be implemented until a January effective date.
And I also would like to highlight too that this is similar to the water rates we have proposed in here, 2 years of rates, starting January 1 of of calendar year 25 and calendar year 26.
Thank you.
And you're recommending which option?
It was option B from the 5-year rate study.
Okay.
It's the $31 residential rate in year 1.
I'm sorry, Alderman Blanton, go ahead. I was trying to get organized.
I know I won't win this battle, and I know that's fine. But what I would like to say publicly is, and I've spoken to Christine about this and Michael, I would love for us to implement, and I understand it's legal, a relief system for our elderly. I don't know what that cutoff is. I'm getting closer all the time. We could start at 55. I'd be happy. So that we have people that this will really affect their monthly, if they qualify for the relief for the trustee's office for property taxes. There are some programs that would also bring relief to our services. I'm not saying they don't pay, but I just think that as we continue to increase our cost of living for the rudimentary of services that most people have to have, I would like for us to really work on some kind of program. Truthfully, most people who are, I'm looking at you, I'm sorry, I can look at Mark or Jack.
Yeah, that's fine.
Most people who get older, they're going to have a much lesser trash collection, So I just feel like the curve doesn't need to hit them as hard as it does some of those who continue to have all of the services, whether it's brown bag, whether it's white goods, whether it's, all of those things. As you get older, your life decreases in those services. So, yes.
We do provide free service to those that qualify for the property tax relief from the trustee now.
But not on this, is what I understood.
On sanitation, we do.
Okay.
It is no cost for folks that qualify. Now, that's
Qualify, yeah.
seniors at a fixed income level or below, and it is all disabled veterans regardless of their income. So that is not a huge number of people. One of the things we talked about in implementing this is just making sure people are, that there's an
Yeah, it'd be
awareness
great if
that
we
they
can-
can do both, just to make sure that that's there. If there's interested in looking at something beyond that, that's something we'd have to investigate how to do that. The trustee is really kind of our agent in doing that, and it's very convenient to piggyback on an existing program. But if you wanted to say, do something beyond that or layer it onto that, we'd have to do some more investigation on that. But that piece does exist today for folks that qualify.
Great.
Do you know how many that actually
I do.
is?
Christine can tell us what. About 315 customers, and it's a $47,000, I think.
And it gets adjusted.
And it adjusts every year, but right now it's $47,000 income.
Or down.
Household income, qualifies you. And then, like I said, any disabled veteran, regardless of income, qualifies. And homeowners, they have to be homeowners. Yeah. So it's 315 right now, 315 households.
Are you done, or are you going into the,
We've done the cost of service presentation a couple meetings back, so we weren't going to go back through that unless you all have
five-year
questions.
plan?
Yeah, that's the 5-year
Gotcha.
plan that we have proposed. That was essentially the cost of service study. But we're glad to answer any questions you have or anything else. We had put it in as what was recommended in the cost of service, but any guidance you have for us, there is a first of 3 readings tonight and sets a public hearing for June 11th. Is the way we've set it up right now, but we're open to any guidance you have on that as well.
Right, so
You're
the
talking about option B?
Option
Said
B
it
from the
was-
cost of service.
Right, and the cost of service is a 1-reading resolution, so that's not on voting tonight, but we have added the ordinance because it's a 3-reading ordinance, and again, as Eric mentioned, it's kind of following through with the budget, so that's the purpose for that.
or do you want to be recognized, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. I mean, I agree with Alderman Blanton. I still think it's a lot on, and frankly, a lot of people in my area, and there's no opt-out, there's no, and I don't know the process for I guess what I would love to know, I would really appreciate it if in a few months, when the time is right, for you to come in and walk us through that whole program. Because if nothing else, I would like to be able to be counseling some of these residents on this. And I don't know that I understand the math enough to know where to guide them, but I'm with you. I mean, maybe there's no way to really effectively manage and opt out, but there's got to be something we can do. And if I can understand the program better, maybe we could be smart enough people sitting here could figure out a way to maybe make some adjustments that make sense to us going forward. So,
We can do that.
okay.
All right, go ahead, Alderman Caesar.
So I think there's 2 questions in my mind. First is around the portion of the rate that is related to hauling and disposal. Almost exactly equals the increase that we're proposing, like almost to the penny. And so I'm curious for those who maybe, if you add, and I'm doing really rough math here, but 436 plus 2666 gets really close to $31. In addition to that, if you look at that increase as a portion of the hauling and disposal fee, as it adds up, it gets really close to kind of maintaining that gap that we're chasing each year. And some are certainly using more hauling and disposal than others. And I think that's the basis to take Brandy and Alderman Brown and Alderman Blanton's argument of the older population. I would also say it's not only the older population, but the population that is a single homeowner that is certainly using less of the waste hauling and disposal service than my family is. And as Alderman Barnhill said last time, I certainly could pay more, and I think that would be something that I would be interested in, is could you right-size the cost to those who are living in larger homes that are likely disposing more, and or incentivize us to move to a program similar to the one that Nashville looked at. I think it was in 2019, and I'm happy to share this with staff. I just got a copy of it, but it's a solid waste master plan, and their goal in Nashville was achieving zero waste through aggressive diversion tactics to try to reduce that cost of hauling. And while I know the complexity of a solid waste management department in Nashville is substantially greater than Franklin, I would like to see us, rather than raise rates on all, I'd rather raise rates on those who are using more of our services. And so that's where I would stand. In addition to the older population, 370, I think you said, Christine, were the number of individuals.
315.
315 out of a 317 out of a population of 90,000. Obviously, it's a lot more people than homes. Doesn't feel great. And then the final piece I would say is relative to the graph that we have here. The City of Franklin sanitation tipping fee is what? Can you give me a definition for that column?
That's when private haulers come to our transfer station and they dump their waste at that station that then we haul to the landfill.
So
that's what they pay at the gate for us.
Correct.
Really, to their mindset, that's
what it costs to get rid of their waste.
Yeah, to get rid of their
That's
waste.
their limit.
What are they currently paying? Is that top
It's
number
65.
65.
Correct.
We've adjusted that pretty aggressively the last few years, but we're watching it.
Well, and that's where I
Closely.
have a concern.
Yeah.
We're putting on our residents this significant, almost 20% increase, and we're putting less than 10% increase on our commercial.
You have, but
dollars.
when you look at the run-up before that, it was $45 and $50 not too long ago. We
Yes.
have ramped that up pretty significantly, and this lessens the burden on our residents because we're making a little profit here
Right.
and applying it to lessen the impact on private citizens.
Is that what that last column is on the far right? Is that the percentage of charge? It's 86% because of the commercial.
That is, no, that's not that number. We have calculated that number. I don't have it in front of me, but certainly something.
It's in the cost of service study. We can pull that for you.
So we certainly don't want to lose that commercial.
No,
business.
you don't.
Right.
That's why we're trying to make sure we hit the right place in the market, that we don't push it too high, that we lose customers, but that we are in the place where we're maximizing that as best we can as a revenue source, because it does lessen the impact that we need to go to residents for. What that right column is, Alderman Baggett, that's the amount of the cost that is really a fixed component that we are paying, whether you got one bag or 20. That's what it costs to get a truck to go by your house every week, or multiple trucks, because we're picking up yard waste and, everything.
Yeah, I'd like to remind about, sometimes it gets lost in translation that you associate our department with trash, but, we'll bring a trash truck, we bring a recycling truck, we bring a brush truck, we bring a brown bag truck, we'll bring a bulky item if you call us truck.
Yeah.
So, if we were just picking up trash, we wouldn't be talking about $30 a month.
And I think therein lies my position. The folks that live in a townhouse are probably not putting out as many brown bags as I did this weekend in a
We
year.
average 45 pounds a home in trash. We average 8 pounds a house collection in recycling. So we get about 45 pounds is the average trash cart. Out of $45 a ton, we're paying to get
I would have thought recycling would have been a little higher than that. 8 pounds of recycling?
It's lighter by definition. When you think about what it is, it may be full, but it's not heavy like the trash. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish there was a way to do this like we do water. If I'm using so many gallons of water, I'm paying a whole lot less than somebody with a family of 4 that's paying a lot more. And I know, we're just not, as I said, sometimes our neighbors, we just share the rollout because nobody's got much trash.
There's some cities that have tried that, and, it's possible. Practicality of it is,
Still going-
you're managing a lot more data than you are trash.
Yeah.
You have to put scales on your trucks, and they've got to operate. It's got to record each address correctly.
Or you just
When you
charge.
get into disputes, people calling in and saying, well, I didn't have 40 pounds in my cart.
Or
Well,
if you have one person in a household, you pay this rate. If you have 2 people, you pay this rate. And if you have 3 or more, you pay our square
who's
footage
going
of
to
the house.
say how many
Yeah.
people are in the house? I don't know.
I mean, one person down here is gonna have this amount of trash. 2 people over here maybe have this amount, and this family of 4 has this amount. And, that makes more sense to me than anything,
But
rather
what-
than wait. You can't literally generate that.
But the 86%, just let me make sure I'm understanding this right, because I hear what everyone's saying, but 14% is what we have to work with. Like, so even
That's
if the
variable.
person,
Yeah.
the variable savings for the person who only has 1 bag of trash a month,
Yeah,
you could reduce their rate 14%. And the hard cost, I mean, it would still cost that much to go pick up the 1 bag.
Right.
Once, like, you just have the fixed cost of
Yeah.
the 80 of that 86%. So really, you've got 14% to work with. Even if we could magically weigh everyone's trash upon disposal into the truck, anything over 14% in a discounted rate that you provided would be a subsidy coming from the general fund. And so essentially, I mean,
Yeah,
we would be, it would be a subsidy. So we would be taking
Yeah.
general fund dollars to subsidize anything over 14%, which 14% makes sense. I mean, that's $3 or $4, $5 a month. That is not insignificant. This is one of the most clearest, like, you draw a line with the cost of the service and how, and what people charge. I understand that it's gone up more, $5, $6 a month. But there's nothing more transparent that I've seen come across here. It's a whole heck of a lot more transparent. No offense to the parking deck and calculation, but this is the most transparent, like, line from a cost to what it charges, and us not having to raise a tax to pay for it, a property tax or a sales tax. Like, this just is the cost to it. This is what it costs. And so, I think with the public, I think we need a big push on this relief from the county. I don't think enough people know about it. And I think we need 300 out of a city of 88,000. I think there is something there. So I would let's put some effort and put some energy into that and get some folks off, that are getting property tax relief. But I don't see, by the time we start paying for the measuring scales and the implementing, it's going to cost us more. It's going to cost us more money.
That's not logical.
And this is about as fair as it gets from a cost standpoint. I know it doesn't feel fair, but to some, but it's 86% fixed cost. That's
As requested, we'll pull something together and bring it back in front of the board to go through their program, and we'll ramp up efforts to
I like the water
make sure
rates
people
better.
know about it.
Oh, wait, the water rates just come through, the meter, that's right, as opposed to all of this stuff. It's not-
Within
it's
that
not at
structure,
all.
you have something similar. You have that fixed cost
Yeah.
as part of that rate, and then you have the volumetric piece.
But
It's just
the
not nearly
volumetric
as
piece-
high a fixed cost in
Yes.
water as it is here. And that's been a
Right.
balancing act too.
Well,
But yes.
I'm paying for what I use in water, then I'm not paying for what I trash, because regardless, if I buy one bag or 10, like my neighbor, who stuffs it in, they can't shut the lid or whatever, and I'm paying taxes and schools. I don't have kids in the schools, but I'm paying that, and so people are paying.
And I'm in the
I don't-
Franklin
I don't
Special
have-
School District, and I've got actually Vice Mayor
Yeah, and
Brown.
I don't have
Yeah.
them. I don't have them.
I'm up for the education. I'm up for learning about the program and trying to get, and maybe even looking at that program and how we might adapt it to make more than 300 people eligible for it. So I'm all for that. I will just say on the water example,
Yeah.
all of the infrastructure, the treatment plant, the pipes, the whatever, it's the same as the cost. It's all the same cost to take water to a house of a widow who's taking one shower, whatever, versus a family of 5 taking a shower.
Yep.
But they use less water, and the meter bills them for less water. And so, the same argument's there. The fixed costs are the fixed costs, but they are billed for what they use. On the trash side, we're saying the fixed cost is the fixed cost, but you're going to pay what you pay. And that, all I'm saying is there's just a disconnect in that for me. And so I appreciate the opportunity to educate and see what we can do on the program to maybe make it a little bit better for people. So,
Item 9 is Resolution 2024-18, declaring certain sections of Jordan Road right-of-way as surplus real property and establishing conditions for disposal of that right-of-way.
This item had come up at the Capital Investment Committee, and I think there's been a little more discussion. We just wanted to bring it back to you. This is on both agendas so that it could keep moving along, but we'll walk you through what this abandonment is and how it works with both existing neighborhoods and some new developments. So, Jonathan, do you want to touch on it, then we can have Greg? Okay, let them do theirs first.
Hi, my name is Greg Gamble, land planner, landscape architect representing the applicant, Toll Brothers. I'm here tonight with Mike Burton, who's with Toll, and they are proposing a by right R2 subdivision on Jordan Road. I have handouts, but for the sake of time, this portion here highlighted in blue or on the screen in red, it is the old Jordan Road that's currently closed off. That road is in the backyard of our neighbors. And Toll has a proposal to construct a new public street that would then put back of lots to back of lots, removing that portion of public street from behind our existing neighbor's backyard. that right-of-way would then be split 50/50. So in abandoning this portion of Jordan Road, you get a new road that wraps around, providing backyards in backyards. It also provides options for connectivity. We're going to be taking a preliminary plat to the Planning Commission. Alderman Berger has been working very closely with her constituents and the neighbors of this property, as well as with Paul Holson, Jimmy Wiseman, to talk about what these alternatives are for connectivity. We're going to be bringing that to the Planning Commission. The actual right-of-way abandonment would not occur until after the preliminary plat is approved by the Planning Commission, after the site plan is approved for constructing the new roadways, and after a final plat is recorded, and that's when the land would actually be conveyed. But to start that process, we need to understand whether or not the board and mayor and alderman is open to the abandonment of this right-of-way. If you go out there right now, it is blockaded off on both ends.
So how long has it been blocked off? How many years?
About
20
2010 is my understanding.
Long time, okay.
Before that.
2010. You're in high school.
We presented this at the CIC. This is a quick exhibit that shows how the roadway is almost a ditch section. Now, we're going to be filling that in so that our neighbors have a little bit more of a flat backyard, but keeping a drainage swale down the middle of that where that new property line would be to make sure that we're conveying stormwater the way that it is today, but giving them a leveler area.
You're good. That's a lot of excitement, Alderman Vice Mayor Brown.
Hey, I just want, I'm hoping you heard me over here.
Was he conveying stormwater?
Apparently. I love Jordan Road. I don't know what it is. But most of our discussion in CIC was actually how to handle the berm and the relocation and all of that. So I don't know where we landed with that.
And you had questions about the power lines as well. And we
Correct.
have some answers about that as well, I believe.
And there's a couple things. Okay, so I met with the people, and they finally just said, yeah, we're good with filling it in. And the power lines aren't going to go under because it's like $1 million or, what was it? 2 million, 1 million?
It's a bulk feeder between two substations.
Yeah.
MTE is not
And
going
they
to
didn't
allow
want
it
to
to
put
go
it
under.
underground, but they said, hey, if you want to pay for it, you could. And that's like over $1
It
million.
was my understanding that
So-
with this particular section, that Middle Tennessee Electric did not want a portion of it underground
No,
either.
they didn't.
They either want a whole block underground or they don't.
Yes,
They don't want
that's
a
the problem.
portion.
That's why it got so expensive, because you'd have to lay down at least 4 lines.
Correct.
Or maybe more. So the people said, okay, so we'll fill it in and then do all the stuff that they recommended, and they were fine with it. Yeah. Because I remember that conversation too. Yeah. And we'll come back.
Is that all? Alderman Berger, is that all the people had to say?
Yeah, that, for this portion of it, and we're going to have some other things that will come back to us later, but for this item that's on the list tonight for our agenda, this is what it's about. Abandoning that and giving it back to both of the property owners on both sides.
Is the abandonment contingent upon a development occurring?
Oh, pretty much.
The way
Yeah.
it does occur, whether it's front facing Jordan Road or facing into
Yeah, and
Lane.
it occurs
Understood, but if
because,
this doesn't get approved, if your plan doesn't get approved by planning commission and we abandon the road and then,
oh, it's going to, I mean, they have a by right
this is-
there too. This is a by right, so they can.
or,
develop.
but you said there was other.
I can't speak for city staff, and maybe they can weigh in, but your vote tonight is to endorse or give us the ability to go through the process
we're
to
not
abandon the road, but the actual abandonment doesn't occur until the plat's recorded.
Okay.
So we've got preliminary plat, site plan, final plat, like we've got a whole process.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
And just to say the comment that was made, they would be building this new road so that the lots would face the new road and again would have their back yards
Yeah.
that would go to next to the existing backyards. And I think that made a big difference.
Yeah, which is required.
But it then would it be then a through street kind of, you know?
I will say that the resolution in front of you does, it's a resolution. It does declare it as surplus property though. So it does declare the roadway, the right of way as surplus property.
Effective immediately?
Well, effective as of passing of the resolution.
Does that have to happen in order for you to go and submit the items?
Yes, it does.
This allows them to make their.
To
plan
continue
with that.
forward. It allows them to get the multiple access points, as I'm assuming is part of the requirements for you to construct it. Because this basically would then continue, Jordan Road would not be through anymore, but it would allow it would allow you to continue on that access point through this new subdivision. So you could basically continue on kind of a Security Jordan Road through the subdivision now.
I'll boil it down. If this other road wasn't happening, I don't believe we'd be voting
would
to
not.
make this surplus property.
No, we would not.
So make sure that we don't abandon the property forever. I mean, until this is all, settled and done, right? We don't start. Does that make sense? Eric's
Yeah.
tracking.
Yes.
I don't know if that.
Our ability that, if this development does not happen as envisioned, what's our ability to get it?
I don't want to have to go back and buy that road,
Yeah.
that right away
Yeah.
again if we all of a sudden now we don't want or whatever.
And
You're
we
not
still,
giving up the right of way, you're
Yeah.
just declaring it surplus.
yes, we're not transferring anything yet.
There's no transfer of ownership until the
Yes.
final plat's recorded.
Yes.
Yeah, so at that point, you've got
You
it.
would know, you'd
Right,
No, you
yeah,
have
that's
it at
right.
that point.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10 is change order 1 to City of Franklin contract 2023-24 with Bell and Associates. Has to do with the repair of the slab on Baker's Bridge. Anybody have a question about that one?
We had talked about this a couple months ago as an emergency repair. This has moved forward, and it's about half the cost of what we had originally thought. So we're doing this as an amendment to the existing bridge, bundled bridge projects.
So the original project, and I'll just give you a brief update. The original project out at Baker's Bridge was to actually construct or rebuild the joint. So this is what the joint looked like before we started out there. And we really haven't gotten very far because when they've worked a couple of nights until we found the issue that we're bringing before you tonight. So they dug out one of the joints, about half of one of these joints. And this is the particular slab we're talking about. It's this first 25 feet of the bridge called the approach slab. And you can actually see if I zoom in a little bit, if it'll let me zoom in. Probably won't, because I want to. Yeah. You can actually see where the slab drops right there. You can actually stick your hand between the curb and the slab. The good thing is the slab itself, the approach slab sits on a beam at the end of the bridge, and it sits on a beam out further next to the pavement itself. But what we found was actually one of the concrete retaining wall pieces at the end of the side of the bridge is actually slid out. So it was actually letting the stone backfill slide out as it rained. So where water was sliding in underneath the curb line where it cracked and slid a little bit, a little bit of settlement's natural. We expect to see that. We didn't expect to see that block actually slide out. Some of the retaining straps actually broke over time. So where that air is able to get to it, what we're actually going to do is go back. We're going to have a man go down. We're going to core a section of sidewalk, have a man go down, repair those steel straps, fill it in with flowable fill concrete in several layers, and then make repairs from there. And because we already see the same issue at the other approaches, we don't think we have the same issue with regard to losing material and seeing a void underneath the roadway. But we're going to go ahead and do small cores just to check while we're there, just to be safe, and do the rest of the improvements. So we've had several questions why we had the roadway blocked off and there's no work going on for the last 60 days. This is why, because we found the void, and obviously we want to fix that while we're there.
Good explanation. Okay, and then item 11 is City of Franklin Contract 2019-0097 with Tennessee Department of Transportation for State Route 96 Traffic Signal Improvement Project. I call this project the Ann Peterson Project because Ann has talked about this, so anything that improves that signal timing, I would be for, and I think Alderman Peterson is. And with that, unless there's additional questions or comments, we are not going to get to item 12 or 13 tonight. And so we're going to, unless there's some other business or comment, we're going to adjourn.
If you will, real quickly on that one item on 96, you will see an item coming shortly thereafter here, probably the next couple of months, that will add, you'll see it says on that item, this one actually extends the time. This one's been waiting in the wings for several months. We were holding off. You'll see that it changes the funding of this project. And it shows as a local funding component the $227,000. That was from the previous, the COVID funding. It's called CRISA funding. If you don't, it's another acronym that they did. But what happened was a lot of that funding basically was pulled just due to the way it worked out for our region. TDOT was able to switch and use the funds, and we were able to get funding back in a different mechanism. We went ahead and moved forward with a time extension. So where that's showing all local funds, we've already gone through at the federal level and the MPO level, we've gotten additional funding that's fully 100% federal for that. So you'll see another amendment coming shortly for us to show that as 100% federal. So where it shows 100% local now, that'll show 100% federal in the next amendment. So amendment number 2 is shortly to follow.
I think that's the one that I voted on.
That's the one that you voted on last month.
All right, see you shortly.